Good morning.
I cannot believe it, except I kind of can believe it. But this is it. We're wrapping up Daily Dose, at least in this iteration, after almost 2.5 years. It's shocking to me. But rather than us just talking about it, we decided to bring a repeat guest back to finish up our Thursday repeats, but also to turn the tables just the tiniest bit. So let's bring our friend, our marketing guru, and our past guest, Lillian Cotter, to the screen. Hi, Lillian.
Hey, Lillian.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing so good. I've got my coffee because I'm always so jealous of you with your mugs when I'm watching Daily Dose.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
I was very specific about making sure to have my coffee here.
Excellent.
Good choice.
Mother says, well done, you two. Incredible. Mother, way to be on right at the start. Good job. And let me just say before we get into this, because I do not want to miss this. Bonnie Bowman, Bob Lubin, John Zvorowski, Ann Riley, Sandy Thiel, you five in particular, thank you. Wow, have you been super supporters of this show? And then everybody else, thank you. We can do some more of that at the end, but I did not want to forget you five in particular. Unbelievable. Okay, Lillian, we're here. We're ready.
Okay. So what that feels like this is going to be a very calm, casual interview, not an interrogation.
We're here. We're ready.
But I, for reasons that we'll talk about at the end, have been rewatching some different versions of Daily Dose and some different episodes here recently. And I just was thinking about that very first time that you guys, I don't know if it was the first time you guys went live. It was like in response to this other project you guys had just finished up. But it was so lovely to see what I knew was about to become Daily Dose. And then to hear you guys talk about it, not really knowing what it was going to be. So a lot of what we're talking about today is going to be kind of reflecting on what Daily Dose is and what it means to you guys. And I'm curious to kind of start out, what was your thought process during sort of that first conversation and going into that initial becoming Daily Dose?
Do you want to answer?
Initially, the first interview.
So the one with the toast.
Yeah, the one with the toast. Yes, the one where I ate all the toast, as it should be named.
Yeah, it's true.
I haven't actually eaten toast.
Stop it. Stay on top.
I always check.
It's
to
true.
see if it's my toast.
It's true. Okay. Anyway,
I didn't know. I was a little nervous going for at the start. I didn't know what it was going to be like.
Mm-hmm.
I was afraid we were going to have some, go into some argument or something, which never happened. But for me, especially during the pandemic, when absolutely everything shut down and so did AA meetings. I mean, they started up online, but they weren't the same. Doing this was kind of like an AA meeting for me. I mean, because of the pandemic, I got, thanks to Dana, live on Daily Dose twice. I got given a year sobriety chip. So for me, it was kind of like that. It was important. It helped me, and I learned a lot as well, listening to other people.
Okay.
I want to know more from Dana, but just really, really quick, can you explain what it is that you get out of AA meetings and what it is that you get out of that you similarly get out of this?
It's like that old, one of those old adages, misery loves company, knowing you're not alone. Still listening to people talk about their, what their story, what got them from there to here. It's humbling. It's helpful. It's a blessing to hear it from, the safe end of all of this. It reminds you you're not alone, and hopefully this is what we did for that. And that's what AA meetings are for me. You're not alone. You're in a room that you're never judged. Everyone's in there's the same, and there's something friendly and peaceful about that, weirdly.
That's lovely. There's a lot of interesting things within that I'm definitely going to loop back to. But Dana, where were you at for that first conversation, and what were you hoping to?
Well, so we had done this huge 9-week series that wrapped up in April. And it had so exceeded whatever expectations we put on it. And I don't feel like we really had any expectations for it. But, my little website had been getting, I don't know, 800 views a month, and it went to 25,000 views. And people just poured out of the woodwork to say, that they also understood this, that they were struggling, that they were married to someone who was struggling. They grew up around alcohol, all these things. The outpouring was so profoundly moving that I felt like, God, I think there's a place for this to keep going. And then we had taken this online 2-day workshop about how to sort of, build your expertise and be a person who was living up to your brand. That's not exactly it, but close enough. And what they really were saying is you just need more content to sort of provide this body of evidence. So I said to Maz at the end of the first day, what if we just did some online conversations? And for me, the important piece, and no one who knows me will be surprised by this, but the key piece to this was that they needed to be short, they needed to have a topic, and they needed to stay on topic. So you might remember that in July of 2020, we had the previous administration in the White House. COVID was not going well. The world felt like it was on fire from about 40 different angles. And I was pretty furious all the time. And so we would start these little online conversations about nothing. And then we would go into this kind of, political rant. And by we, I mean me. So the point was to see what would happen if we just said for 15 minutes, we're going to talk about some aspect of addiction, alcoholism, or our marriage surviving it. And that was really the only goal we had. And so it just started from there. I feel like we said, what if we just did 50 episodes? What if we just did 50? Well, 334 episodes past 50. I guess we did 50.
Yeah, I think there's a million things about that I'm so curious about. We're going to talk about kind of how you guys went from that initial year and what the ways that Daily Dose has evolved. But I know from knowing your brand and your mission really well, that a big part of your mission is that isolation that both you and Maz kind of alluded to there. And I'm curious as to, there's this secret theme to Daily Dose, not that secret, it's very intentional, I'm sure, of the perception of you are alone that comes with this for family members, for the person struggling with addiction or in recovery or whatever. And then there's the reality of all of this community that you're talking about and that experience of seeing this outpouring. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that initial isolation and the kind of counter narrative that you have both created and found.
Do you have anything to say off the bat?
You go for it first.
Okay. It kind of makes me cry a little bit, Lillian, to think about it, because wow, the years that Maz was drinking were in so many ways the loneliest, hardest years of my life. And I can't speak for him, but to watch someone you love decline into something that is so beyond what you can get to or reach, it really was like watching a very slow death. Except that when you're watching someone you love die of cancer, you sort of understand it. I didn't understand it. And so I just never talked about it because I didn't know how to talk about it. I was super ashamed of it. If I did have an inkling of it, I felt like a failure. I was mortified that I brought this into my child's life. I was angry that I was having to deal with it. I missed this man who I had so much regard for and who I was so in love with. And then I just was so confused. How in the world could I not solve this? I could not figure that out. And I just have to believe, because of the way everyone else has talked about it with us, that I was not singular in thinking no one else will understand this and everyone will judge us, so we just can't talk about it.
Mm.
Because everybody feels that way. And what I can tell you today is I do not understand how we can all know that it's not true, but it becomes so true for us that we shut everything down that we can. We put up as many doors or barriers as we can to anybody actually discovering the truth. And we just hunker down and convince ourselves that no one will understand it, so we can't talk about it. I don't understand how that myth continues to perpetuate, but it does. It is alive and well today. And it is excruciating for me to imagine anybody else being where I was. And I know that many people are in much worse places than I was. But that isolation piece is just indescribably lonely.
Mm-hmm. And Maz, for you, how is that? And we don't have to go too much into this, but how is that similar to or different from your experience?
It was similar in some odd ways. I mean, when I actually let myself do some self-reflection, I knew there was something wrong with me. I didn't know what to do about it. And then when I started to think that and stop myself doing it, it was always I was in a weird place that, well, I don't deserve help. You know, I had a life and I threw it away. So this is it. So this is what I'm left with. And there is a lot of despair there, but you kind of, one thing I've noticed talking to a lot of addicts is that's similar with everyone, and you push that deep down and then you wallow in it. It's not even self-pity. It's
sort of a crazy resignation.
It's a resignation and a realization that this is, you know, there's no way out and this is it. So, you know, tread water till you go down.
Yeah,
that was the single most revealing moment of Daily Dose to me. Was the first time Maz said that. We were talking to Shannon Stefke in 2020, and he said that, and you can see my face. I cannot believe that is where he was at, because that is just an unimaginable place for me to go to. Just another thing that was so valuable for me as someone who did not have an AA community or an NA community or Al-Anon community, excuse me, before all this started, was we had conversations because we had to talk about something. We had conversations we never would have had any other way. I never would have known about him. Never. I never would have gotten that insight, because if he knew it, he'd already shared it at AA and wouldn't have thought to share it with me. I would never have thought to ask, because it's an inconceivable thought for me. I would never have learned so much about him, about us, and about me. It has been one of the greatest gifts of my life.
I mean, since I've been sober, we've been talking, but and it wasn't an intentional reveal. We just doing this has brought stuff out. I had no idea Dana desperately thought she needed to go to Al-Anon.
I did, and then realized I desperately
and I
did
just
not.
thought, well, of course. And it never dawned on me that I was getting all the help in the world going to AA meetings, and I just thought Dana was fine.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And the idea that you two both had these assumptions about what the other one was going through and what the other person's experience was. And it's not until you have this conversation that, like you said, there's so many emotions wrapped up in this, and there's so much shame, and there's so much isolation from this, the idea that you're the only people experiencing this, and then also from each other. Yes. And I feel like Daily Dose is the exact counter to that. Like the intention you guys set out to have, which is making other people not feel that terrible feeling of isolation and shame, is exactly what Daily Dose is. And it's that, I think that from what I'm hearing from you guys, the surprise is both how much of a community there was, but also how much you guys were able to find each other more in that. And I'm curious if you guys could describe the experience of the reality of how much of a community there is versus that perception of you're the only ones who've ever gone through this. And so you can't talk about it because no one will understand. And then the reality of what you have found and what is actually out there.
Well, for me, so I went into rehab on my 47th birthday. So that it was a Thursday. That night, I went over to St. Genevieve, the front building by Prairie St. John, if you happen to be in Fargo and know that place. So I had my first AA meeting there, and I got my 24-hour chip, and there was about 40 people there, and I thought, all right, so there's 40 people in here, and I've just admitted something I haven't said to anyone in years. So I thought I can deal with this. Maybe this won't be that bad. So 3 days later on a Saturday morning, they bussed us to St. Olivet, or Olivet Lutheran Church in Fargo, where the 8 o'clock Saturday morning men's only group met. So I walked into this room, and there was maybe 250, 300 men in there. And I walked in and caught a breath and thought, what the bloody hell is this? And within an hour, I felt almost relieved that I certainly was not alone. I mean, if you could, they weren't even in the basement of this church. There were so many of them. I mean, this church is huge, so they set aside half the main floor. There's, 50 or 60 tables with 10 or 12 people around them.
Yeah.
And it was everyone, when you go around, it takes about 10 minutes to introduce each other, say, I'm Maz, I'm an alcoholic. It felt almost releasing, like as though a weight was lifted off your shoulder, that I thought, well, all right, so this kind of makes sense about when they start saying, it's more common than you think, or there is hope for you all. And then to walk into a room of people in various stages of living with sobriety, it was powerful medicine.
Yeah.
I didn't say I felt great straight away, but it was a good starting point.
And I think for me, the influx of emails and texts and messages that we got when we first went public with this in February of 2020 from all over the country, complete strangers, gave me my first inkling of just an understanding that if you don't have this in your life, you are the anomaly, actually. It's very, very rare to meet anybody who can say, I have no experience with it. And mother, you can't say it now either because your son-in-law's done it. So I don't know anybody who can say it, that they've got no experience with addiction in their life. So that was my first inkling. But then for me, I think the real surprising moment of Daily Dose was that I would be in the grocery store and someone would come up to me and say, are you on that program with your husband on TV? And I would say, yeah, I mean, and they would say, me too. I'm watching you all the time. Complete strangers. Maz had it happen. Unbelievable small conversations. Every single time I would think to myself, maybe we've kind of said everything we need to say. Let's wrap it up. Within 5 hours, some stranger would stop one of the two of us somewhere and say, please keep doing this work. It's so important. And here's what's most interesting to me. When we made this announcement 6 weeks ago, not one person has said to us, please keep going, which I'm taking as a positive, that this is the right step, not as no one's paying attention. This is the right step right now. I feel incredibly confident that we're doing the right thing. And you and I, Lillian, feel confident that we're doing the right thing from a marketing perspective. So the universe has blessed us in this work, and the universe is going to continue to bless us. I just know it's true. And my hope and my understanding is this work isn't going anywhere. 384 episodes will live there until YouTube crashes or all the satellites fall out of the sky. So it's here.
Okay. That's a very bleak peek into the future that you imagine. But I'm assuming that's like centuries from now.
Centuries from now, Lillian.
I think we might be talking worst case scenario here. Just
but I think that leads really well into the sort of next thing that I want to talk about, which is, so you guys, you have this experience of isolation, you have this experience of getting a peek into this community, and then you guys decide to move forward, and like you said, you had that idea of 50 episodes, and you decide to just go and do it every day. And that's where the name Daily Dose comes from, as you guys ended up doing that every day for a year. And I'm wondering about what that experience was like. And then, because I talked to you, I know, but pretend that I don't know. What was the experience of the transition like?
When we were doing it 5 days a week, everything of significance was pretty shut down. Mm-hmm. So it felt easy to do. I mean, there wasn't that much going on in the world unless you were a frontline worker, but we are not. So we were doing our jobs. You were on summer holiday. I was working from home. And for whatever reason, I never felt like 5 days a week was a stress or a strain. We did it for 56 straight weeks. We did it from me flying to Montana to have a family event around something that was happening. We did it from my 2 weeks away writing retreat. We did it in the car on the way to get Maz's green card renewed before he became a citizen. Like the way you get up in the morning and you think, well, should I brush my teeth? Should I not brush my teeth? You don't question that. You just brush your teeth. We just got up and did Daily Dose. And then we worked with you, and you gave us this incredible gift, which was, I feel like you're fatigued and your audience might be too. What if you took August off? And the reason that it worked so beautifully for me is it felt like we were taking a European holiday, because so many Europeans take August off. So I was like, yeah, I'm in. That makes me feel very, very shishi and posh. So we took that month off and then came back to 2 days a week, which I think has been really important and a good cadence. And the only thing that doesn't make sense about it is the name.
Well, and like we talked about then, the name makes sense because you did do it Daily Dose every day for those 56 weeks.
Yeah.
But Maz, what was that experience like doing those 5 days a week for the 56 weeks and then the transition?
The only stress was when we suddenly realized that we hadn't actually agreed on a topic. Which happened.
It didn't happen very often.
It didn't happen very often. I mean, some mornings we'll, at about 7:30, Dana's, hey, Mazzy, how about we do this instead? And I read what Dana's said, and I went, yeah, all right. And it seemed to work. Some of them may not have been as polished as others.
Most of them.
We tried it, and we also try to keep to current events. If something big happened in one night, we'd try and, is there a way we can talk about that related to alcohol? Mm-hmm. I mean, my favorite thing we did was Memorial Day. Mm-hmm. I looked up the history of Memorial Day, and I looked up statistics for veterans, addiction rates for and we talked about that. And that was just it's Veterans Day, what do we do? And so I just spent an hour doing a super quick search on the internet, and then we just made this thing work. But it was one of my favorite episodes. And lots of people thanked us for that too. It's like, I thought, had we planned that, it could have been extra great. But as it was just good.
Well, and had you planned it, maybe it would have been overthought, like maybe some of that authenticity that you guys radiate would have been not there, and then it wouldn't have felt so real. So you never know. I can look back at my life and tell you a million things that I coulda, woulda, shoulda, and I wouldn't have been exactly where I am. So, the other thing that was sort of at what point and what was the process of starting to bring on guests?
I don't really remember above and beyond feeling like there had been 3 people for the beginning of this decline in this house, because it really started in earnest, I would say, when Quinn was in high school, that Maz's drinking got bad.
Mm.
And I felt like Quinn might have such an interesting perspective, both as a young man, as a stepchild, as someone who had gone through it, but then had been away. Quinn was 21 when Maz went into the hospital. And most important to me, and one of my biggest areas of gratitude for Maz's sobriety, is that Maz and Quinn repaired their relationship after Maz got sober too, which would not necessarily have had to happen. Quinn was out of the house. There was no real reason for that to happen above and beyond the fact that they both decided to see if there was something worth restoring. And my gratitude for that is just boundless, because these are the two most important men in my life.
Mhm.
I didn't want Quinn's experience to be where it had been, and I wanted them to have their whole own new relationship, which you absolutely have, independent of me.
Thankfully.
Yes, thankfully. So we started with Quinn, and it just was an interesting dynamic. So that, I think he was like episode 71 or 72. And we have done it every single Thursday we've gone live, with the exception of the Thursday we couldn't get somebody's computer to work. And so we did my eyebrow pencil, which was sort of a guest.
It had a backstory leading up to sobriety of where she bought the eyeliner.
It did.
It was weird, but it made sense.
It did. But otherwise, we've done, I don't know, 92 guest episodes or some bonkers.
I am going to need to watch the eyebrow pencil episode.
Okay, I'll send it to you.
Episode?
I'll send it to you. It's a good one.
It's actually not as weird as it sounds, to be honest with you.
I'm going to bet that it both is and isn't.
That's a safe bet, Lillian.
It's a David Lynch special.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So then it just sort of took off, and those conversations were so powerful, so engaging. It was so amazing to, in essence, sort of hear the same story through individual lenses, that I can't imagine now not having done that piece of it. Not to mention the fact that we met some incredible human beings, incredible human beings.
Yeah. Maz, I'm curious about the same experience for you, just guests in general, or kind of what that process looked like when you first started bringing people on, and what's been since then.
Just listening to the guests, again, for me, it was like going to a meeting, listening to their stories, how they got from there, what they did with their lives. I mean, a lot of them, some of them became counselors, they went back to school. Some of them started a couple of them started non-profits. One of them, a mother, started a fantastic website that lets you get information on the best,
kind of like
fit,
Orbits.
The best fit
rehab
center for your child
or anybody.
And she did it because her daughter was really struggling with her addictions, and she's completely sober now, and we had them on separately and on together. I mean, that was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, to talk to police officers who figured it out, or who had to figure it out because they were publicly revealed, or to talk to children of alcoholics, or spouses of alcoholics, or people in recovery, or people still trying to get to being on a full sober side of recovery, or clinicians and therapists, or social workers, or legislators, or people from all over the country. I mean, or the First Lady of North Dakota. I mean, it was a big deal to have Catherine Helgesbergum join us to talk about her own story and Recovery Reinvented. It was a big deal for me to speak at Recovery Reinvented. All of those connections came about in part because of you, Lillian, and in part because we just got curious about who else wants to come on and talk. And it turns out, once you sort of rip that Band-Aid of, I can never tell anyone this, once you decide, I think I can tell this, then you're pretty happy to tell it almost anywhere that will give you a platform, because you know that you might be the person that someone hears that helps them take their first step. And it's that first step that is both hardest and most important.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. It's as you're talking about this, it's reminding me of shortly after we did that first audit, I ended up coming on and being a guest, and this was years ago. Not years ago, like 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
The past is all one blur. Sometime between the beginning of time and the end of time, I was on Daily Dose.
Yep.
And I shared it on Facebook because I know that that's an important thing to do as a social media marketer.
Mhm.
And I was shocked by how many people reached out to me. I was shocked by people kept referring to it as brave. And it was just like one of those moments where I was like, it literally did not occur to me that people because it's been part of my life for so long and because it's so and part of my family and it's something I talk about in life so often that it hadn't occurred to me that. And it was interesting because my first reaction to people saying it was brave was like, should I have thought about this more?
We thought that too when
Yeah.
people started to contact us.
And then the next thing I thought was how much this idea of you shouldn't talk about it, like how important that constant counter of no, you should, and it's good, and there's so many good things that come out of that. I had my whole my dad's side of the family. I got a text from my dad's cousin who had been sent it by my aunt who wanted me to help her figure out how to send it to her sister who wasn't on Facebook. She's like, is there a way for her to like
Wow.
it was like she was like, Jamie needs to see this and you gotta figure like, and I was like, okay, like somebody who I talk to once every 5 years was reaching out to me because of Daily Dose. And I think it's the thing that we've talked about already, which is the perception of isolation, the perception that you are alone, and the direct counter that Daily Dose will continue to be that you are not alone. So I think one of the things that we've talked about a little bit is the idea that you guys, that this is going to continue to be out there, that Daily Dose, this is the last episode that is being created. There's potential, you and I've talked about a lot of different things that could happen in the future. Those are all maybes for the future. There's nothing, I think, to be announced yet.
Nope.
But those maybes for the future exist. But I think what I want to talk about, what does it mean to you guys that these 384 episodes exist, and they're a library of this that will continue to be there until that bleak future you described. What does that kind of mean to you guys?
You go first, Dr. Mary.
Yes.
No, don't focus on that. Focus on the question.
I think it's I think it's fantastic. I mean, it's not the first play. It's just another tool for someone to survive. I mean, we had a guest on who said that they got sober listening to podcasts. They didn't go to AA because they didn't want to be labeled, but they listened to podcasts about how people dealt with it. So, a lot of our stuff is now podcasts as well. So that's just a wonderful tool for someone. The YouTube videos probably won't go away.
Right. Clearly not.
So, they're there if you can find them. You don't really have to watch them in order, just pick one. And if they don't tell a continuing story, so you don't have to find number one and then move on from that one.
Although one is fun. My hair looks terrible and Maz ate all the toast.
Yeah.
There's that.
There you go.
Yeah, COVID hair.
If you want terrible hair, go to episode 1. If you want a unique conversation around an eyebrow pencil, that is somewhere in the guest.
Exactly. Like in the 60s, probably.
But they're there and they're helpful. I mean, I think one of the counselors at Prairie St. John, where I went to treatment, gets his group to watch some of them. They can just get onto a computer and just, it's 15, 20 minutes. Even if they just, if they just show them a couple or any of our guests, that's some great insight for where they're at. I mean, we're not counselors by any stretch of the imagination. So this won't cure you or save you, but it will help.
Yeah. I'm curious. So the other thing that is also not going away is that larger community that exists. And I'm curious about if there's a general experience, like you talked a little bit about this with that idea of like finding out that there's all these podcasts and all these YouTube things. Are there other things within that idea of community, maybe particular guests or just spaces that you've found that there are additional ways in addition to going back and picking episodes and watching that? And if this is someone, I have like comfort TV shows. I can imagine Daily Dose being that comfort YouTube channel for someone who goes back and watches that. Are there other ways and spaces that you have found that people can tap into that community?
That's a great question. We had a lot of people on who have their own podcasts, run their own programs. And then sometimes we were on their shows. And so there was sort of this great reciprocation that was interesting. If you do a Google search for recovery or alcoholism or addiction or anything like that, there's no shortage of places to go. What I am proudest of is that nobody really has done it the way we've done it. Such low production value, which has not always been great. Not always been great.
We're passing the savings on to the customer.
But there's nothing slick about Daily Dose. There's very little prepared about Daily Dose. This is really us. You saw us get on, irritated with each other, and work through it. You saw something get said that was a complete revelation. You saw me much more often than Maz get emotional about something. You saw Maz Mary, and I think this is so important, and then I'll put up this comment from my mom. You saw Maz Mary take the emotional equivalent to a punch in the face over and over and over again, because he created a place where I could reveal absolutely almost every single facet of our lives. The only thing we opted to never speak about, for lots of reasons, all of which are good, was our sex life. Everything else was on the table, even if you didn't love the table that was set. And I can't imagine sitting 5 days a week, 2 days a week for 2.5 years and having someone sit next to you and go, well, when Maz was a drunk, when Maz was passed out, when Maz was a useless waste.
That's not useful to anyone anyway.
No, but he took it, and he took it with grace, and he took it with just absolutely no excuses, full ownership, and then found a way to say, yes, and here's why it's so much better that I'm past that. And that to me is a study in just, I don't even exactly know how to put it into words, but truly the most grace of any human being I have ever encountered.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, I think that's so I don't want to move away from that, but I do. There's some other things that I want to cover as well, and I want to chat about that. So I think one of the big things that I want to make sure is clear as we're talking about this idea of that isolation situation that you guys were in, and then the community that you found, and that it's something that you and I talked about a lot when we first discussed the idea of like, is this the time to let go? Is this the time to kind of move this away to being something else and set this to the side? Is that idea of like, Daily Dose is not creating new things this way anymore, but it's not going anywhere. Like it's still there, and the community is still there, and that counter narrative to isolation is still there, and that very loud statement of, this is not something that should be quiet. It is not something that should be hidden behind doors, because that does harm.
Yes.
And the extreme counter narrative of that is here. And you guys have you have moments for any occasion that's coming that you're addressing. There's an episode on Daily Dose about that. You guys have a couple episodes where you talked about different things of the holidays. The last episode that you guys did, you talked a bit about ways to manage holiday parties and other things like that. I just rewatched an episode from, was it last year or 2 years ago, where you guys were making that?
That was 2 years ago where we were making our fun drinks, our NA drinks.
Just 2 years.
It was.
God. And we've done summer drinks too. Summer non-alcoholic drinks.
Summer festive drinks.
Christmas non-alcoholic drinks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if there's any occasion coming up that exists, and there's that larger community, and I think if there's people who are, if anybody for whatever reason, I know that changes in a routine or in a plan, like if having Daily Dose exist is something that is like comfortable and safe for you, it didn't stop existing. It's still there. That community is still there. And something that I actually mentioned to you right before we hopped on here is those guests, like you said, they've got those podcasts, so if you're looking for new stuff that exists, one of your former guests, Margaret, is actually someone I got connected through with that. And you mentioned specifically that idea that you didn't have resources as a family member, a loved one. Her company is, her consulting thing, I don't know what to call it. I should know. Is called Embrace Family Recovery. And she is doing some group sessions over the holidays. She had the first one last night. There's another one in 2 weeks to help people and just create like a group place. She's doing some coaching and she's doing them no cost for over the holidays, which is so lovely of her to do. So the point that I'm trying to make in this very roundabout way is that this still exists, and this still is a counter to that. And we've got one more thing that I want to talk about, but before I do that, I'm curious as to what that means to you guys.
Oh gosh, I'm so proud of this work. Even when it frustrated me, even when it was hard, maybe especially when it was hard. I don't know how else I ever would have uncovered the stuff I needed to uncover in myself. I don't know how I would have done that, because I was not, this is such a crazy thing to say, but I was not gifted with addiction and overcoming it the way I watched Maz do that. I watched Maz growing. I mean, you could almost see, well, not almost, you could watch Maz's whole body language change while he was in rehab, as he was discovering and uncovering facets of himself that had led to this. And as he was shedding that and stepping into a new version of himself. And I did not have that opportunity until Daily Dose. And I'm just so grateful for it. So absolutely go back to our guest conversations. Everybody's websites, everybody's information is in those YouTube channels. Go back and seek those people out, because here's what I believe is true. I don't think anybody showed up on Daily Dose with a false persona. I think everybody who came honestly, came with a genuine interest in sharing their story in the hopes that it might help someone else. And if they have moved into the recovery realm as a profession, they're doing it because they genuinely believe that what they have to offer can make a difference. There's not a person we talked to who we got off and I thought, wow, that was gross. Not one.
No.
So seek those people out. You won't necessarily find you won't find new guests with Daily Dose, but there are a lot of best guests to go back to, and then seek them out. And guess what? If you're uncomfortable about it, reach out to them and say, hey, I came across you on Daily Dose. That will give them some context, and it makes it a little bit less scary. It's like we've created an invitation and an introduction for you.
Yeah. Maz, how about you? What are your thoughts on that?
Pretty similar. I mean, when Dana suggested this, I was nervous at first, but then, you can't stay silent if you have successfully or are successfully living with an addiction. I mean, it's a chronic illness. So, I mean, then as we did this journey, I found out that just how lucky I am. 10% of people actually get out of a rehab with a change in their mind about wanting to be sober. Of that 10%, maybe 10% of those make it to a year of sobriety or even 5 years of sobriety. Only about 1% of those make it past 5 years.
Mm.
And it's with some people, it doesn't get easier. Now, I've also been blessed with the fact to this day, 5 years, 10 months, 2 weeks and 2 days, I haven't had a craving to drink. I know people who can't watch an alcohol advert on TV. So, when Dana asked me to do this, I thought, well, I got to do something. I can't just sit down and go, yeah, I'm
Fixed.
I'm in a good place. But so it's, to me, it was kind of, yeah, all right, let's do something useful with this. Let's pay it forward. Even if all of these 380 something episodes help one person get through a dark night, then yay, well done us. Yeah.
I think it's certainly done more than that for more than one person, but that's I think that's every time I've talked to you guys, that's been the message. Like, if anybody is wondering if that's not, I don't think anybody watching you could possibly think that's anything other than the intention. But every time I've talked to you guys, when we talk about the idea of trying to find more people, when there's a lot of reasons to want to do that, but the core reason that you guys have always said is that you think this is helping people and you want to help more people. And that's the work that we did together. And I think this still exists and it still can help more people and hopefully still will. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. But the last thing that I want to talk about, to allude to a little sneak peek of, you guys think this is the last of anything from Daily Dose that you guys are going to see, but they're going to see something very special next week, which is a highlight video that we put together. And I want to talk just a little bit. We're not going to spoil the 5-minute video that's coming out next week, but when Dana and I were first talking about this, I said, if you send me like 5 or 6 videos of Daily Dose, I'll just take those and I'll cut them together. And instead he sent me about 30.
I did.
Did you turn it to Hermione Granger?
I got a little overzealous because they were all so interesting to me.
So I'm curious as to what that experience of going back and looking at those and how it's like picking a favorite child. Like there's so many of these videos and those moments and what that experience of going back and looking at that was like, and potentially.
Well, it's interesting. So Maz doesn't know this is coming. This is new information to Maz as well.
Ooh.
So,
I'm going to have to stop being surprised that my wife can surprise me.
That's true. You should. So, it was interesting. I don't really go back and watch them. I rarely go back and watch them the day of, particularly now with this new streaming service, because I don't have to download anything, which is so delightful. But it was really fascinating. I'm a performer. This is my favorite medium. So I feel like I've been pretty consistent, but you can go back and watch early Maz Mary doing these, and he's sort of got that deer in the headlights thing. And then you watch him slowly get more comfortable, get more confident, get more relaxed in front of the camera. And I think that's really interesting. Again, COVID hair, man, those early episodes are really hard to watch because my hair is so bad.
Did you send anyone when we sent out a search committee for your nose?
No, but remember, longtime watchers, I forgot about that. The sun used to come through this window and it would hit my nose at the perfect time, and I would look like I had no nose. I forgot all about the nose episodes.
It's there.
Yeah, I mean, people learned a lot of weird insecurities about me.
Is probably a good word.
I think it's really interesting. It was interesting to me to realize that the first probably 5 or 6 episodes were things that we actually had been talking about, like the 3 legs of the stool that the therapist who we worked with introduced to us, which was, for me, that was the singular turning point for me. Why Maz always has his keys with him. I mean, that was probably the unconscious impetus for the start of Daily Dose. We were on our bikes. Maz had his keys in his pocket. And I said to him, why do you bring your keys? It's my keychain that has the bike lock on it. And he said so casually, because when I was in rehab, I didn't get to have my keys. And I just was never sure that I was going to have a place to come home to. And I was so struck by that. I know exactly where we were on the road. And I said to him, wow, I feel like we have to talk about that in a much different, bigger way. And then that was one of our very, very early episodes. Why we stayed, all these kinds of things. Those we had sort of danced around or discussed a little bit. But boy, 375 of these episodes came about because of Daily Dose. Because we knew we couldn't just show up and sort of song and dance our way through it. We had to have some content. And so it was kind of remarkable to go back. And I very deliberately, after I hit like 28, I thought, you have to stop watching because you're going to look at all of them and go, ooh, this is a good one.
Actually,
this is a good one.
It's 383.
Right, yes. So I stopped at 30, Lillian. You're welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I had this moment of like,
Wow.
what do I?
It's going to be like a 3-hour. This is a Peter Jackson movie, not a 5-minute wrap up.
Come back in the summer for part 2.
Yeah.
She understands that I told her I've recently gotten into video editing, so I could probably put something together.
Well, I will say I've seen a preview of it and it's fantastic. I cried. I really, really loved it. I can't wait to see it next week.
Yeah, it was such a joy to put together. It was one of those things where for me in rewatching those, my experience was, this is a very special thing that is very hard to capture in 5 minutes. And I wanted to find a way to make that, it really was for me, as much as I think your audience is going to love it and is going to see it and go, wow, this is hopefully they'll go, this is an encapsulation of the feeling of Daily Dose. It really was my thank you on behalf of all the people who have watched this to you guys. This is something truly special. And I know you say that a lot, and I know we've talked about it a lot, but I really wanted you guys to have something that you could look at this 5 minutes with a song that Quinn produced or wrote or put over one of Quinn's songs over the top. That is just a little encapsulation of the feeling that is Daily Dose, because you're right. This does not exist other places. This is something that is wholly unique and is a package now. It exists there. And if you want to watch that 384 episodes, this episode is long. It's that 58 minutes. They're usually about 20 minutes. That's a lot of time. And I wanted to capture that feeling in 5 minutes. And I really hope this video did that, because I want you guys to have something that you can look back at and go, this is that special. This really does matter.
Well, I can tell you, you did do that. So thank you, Lillian. I just want to put these 3 comments up really quickly because our podcast can't hear them. I'll sure miss you too with your words of wisdom in all sorts of areas. I'm sure you've been very helpful to many people throughout these past 2.5 years. Keep happy and well, both of you. And Riley, thank you.
Riley.
Mother says, Wally, that would be Dr. Mary. You are the hero of this TV show. Absolutely. It's nice that your partner has the ability to sort of produce and lead this, but you are the one that I am so proud of. Sometimes I've watched you during a session where it all gets revisited, and I just think to myself, who could just sit and have that all recounted again and again? But you do. And by your selflessness, have saved lives, or at least shown a light that only can come from your candle. Absolutely.
Oh, thanks, Bonnie.
And Bob says, thank you too for all that you have done for the people with addiction and for yourselves and all of us who tune in. Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
That is 3/5 of our most ardent supporters. So thank you for that.
Not bad.
No, it's good.
Well, that's everything that I had. And I think ending on that note of these lovely people who have been a part of this from the beginning, and your guys' lovely faces. And that video will be up next week. Otherwise, that's everything I wanted to talk to you guys about. And thank you.
Thank you for all your back end help, Lillian. It made us better, and it gave us a great direction forward. And as Lillian said, this is just the end of what this looks like now. We are absolutely planning already, whether Dr. Mary knows it or not. We are planning other versions of things. Our work isn't done. It's just done in this way. So continue to share these videos with people in your life who need them. And thanks for all of your incredible support. It really,
well, I also
amazing.
want to thank you, Lillian. I also want to thank you for putting up with us, because when we first met and you did some metrics for us, and you went, and you've got
like 6%.
6% engagement. And I went, wow, that's really good. And I'm sitting there, how?
It is good.
The academic
I didn't
world.
learn about internet access metrics when I was in grad school. So I was just thinking, well, okay.
Yeah.
You just gotta trust me.
What is wrong with these two?
Yeah. No, it's been an interesting, steep, and joyful learning curve. So I think it's definitely time to wrap up. Lillian, thanks for the great questions.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for joining us today and giving us the opportunity to reflect. We haven't done that. So this was important for us, as well as I hope everyone else. Merry Christmas if you celebrate it. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Very, very best of luck to everybody in 2023. And the very last thing to say, I guess, is just, if you are in that dark place, you do not have to stay there.
No.
And you don't deserve to stay there. So find help.
Yes, coming from the plant biologist, you're not a tree. Move.
Yeah. Find help wherever you need to. And if you need to reach out to us to direct you somewhere else, do that. We're not going away. We're just going away like this. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
We will be back someday and see you soon. Take care.